much money do you need in retirement savings and retirement investing accounts to retire? Maybe you're asking the question, can I retire at 55? And you're wondering, do I have enough money to retire? Well, the first rule of thumb, if you're asking yourself, do I have enough money to retire, is the replacement ratio. Now, what is the replacement ratio? The replacement ratio is a rule of thumb that financial planners use, and we have been using it for decades. Basically, the replacement ratio says take 70 to 80% of your current income as you're getting close to retirement, and that's how much retirement income you're going to need in retirement. Now, there's a couple things you want to account for. One, you want to account for inflation. So $50,000 today is not going to be $50,000 tomorrow or $50,000 10 years from now. You need to calculate inflation, even when you're doing the replacement ratio. The second thing you want to account for with the replacement ratio is Social Security and pensions. So if you are going into retirement and 80% of what you need is $50,000 in retirement income, once you get to Social Security, you want to calculate that in and subtract that out of your $50,000 that you need. So if you're retiring at 57 and you're going to take Social Security at 67, you're going to have a 10-year stretch where you're going to need $50,000 a year, inflated at 3%, which is the 108-year average for inflation. And then once you get to 67 and you start taking Social Security, you back down that $50,000 or whatever it is 10 years later by the amount of Social Security that you get on an annual basis. So you're adding in Social Security and you're adding in pensions when you're using the replacement ratio to figure out how much money you need to have saved for retirement. And the third thing you want to factor in when you're thinking about using the replacement ratio to determine how much money do I need to have saved for retirement is the replacement ratio is only good for about a 30-year time horizon. And what do I mean by that? If you retire at 55, the replacement ratio says that you can take 70 to 80% of your current income for about 30 years. So 55, 65, 75, 85. So at 85, that's kind of when the scenario runs out, meaning you're running out of retirement assets. Now, does that happen in everybody's situation? No. But it's a rule of thumb, and if you're going to follow the rule of thumb, you want to know the rules that go along with the rule of thumb. So one of the ways that we calculate how much in retirement assets do we need to retire is we use the replacement ratio to figure out how much retirement income do we need, and based on that, we say this is the amount of retirement assets that we need. But what if the replacement ratio is wrong? What if the replacement ratio is leading us in the wrong direction? New data actually suggests that we use 20% less than the retirement assets we actually plan for. So let's say that you think you need $1 million to retire at 55. And I've done videos on this channel, can I retire at 55 with $1 million? In reality, based on new data, you really only need $800,000 instead of $1 million. Now, I'm not going to tell you to not save to $1 million or not save to $2 million. Hey, listen, the more the merrier, right? But we're too hard on ourselves sometimes because new data is showing us that we actually don't need as much to retire that we think we do. We actually need 20% less than we are shooting for. So the replacement ratio is great to give us a good idea of what we need, but in reality, it's a little too high. And why is that? Spending, according to the same data that told us that we are shooting for 20% too much in retirement savings, that data is telling us that our spending is decreasing 1 to 6% per year in retirement. 1 to 6% of your spending is decreasing in retirement. And actually, if you look at this data, the spending formula or the chart for the spending actually goes all the way down until about the mid-80s, and then it starts to increase. And the only reason it increases is because of healthcare costs. And so we really want to be cognizant of this, knowing that how much do we need to have saved for retirement? Well, it might not be as much as we think. All right, how do we determine how much we need to save for retirement? Well, I want to show you two different scenarios, and I want to use the information on the board to get there. And the reason I want to show you two different scenarios is because I want to give you not just a way to determine how much you actually need down to the penny, but I want to give you a range. I don't want you to put too much effort into getting to a certain dollar figure and think, I can't retire unless I have this amount of money. No. It can be a range. So let's look at that range today. Now, we've got a 55-year-old person. They want $50,000 a year in retirement income off of their retirement investments. We're going to look at a withdrawal rate from our assets of 5%. So kind of right in the middle. And we're going to have a life expectancy of 40 years. So the question becomes, how much does this person need in retirement savings in order to retire at 55? So here's how we do it. Now this is just the board. When we go into the EKG, we use the software to get a better, more accurate number. But we're going to use the board first because remember, math don't lie. Okay, so the first way you do this is you say, okay, you need $50,000 a year in retirement income, and we want to do a 5% withdrawal rate from our retirement investments. So you take $50,000, that's our retirement income need, you multiply that by 5%, and that gives you the amount of money that you need in retirement savings. So $1 million. So if we need $50,000 a year, we're going to do a 5% withdrawal rate. We need $1 million. Keep in mind the 5% withdrawal rate is not what the money's earning in the stock market. No, that's that's the percentage that you're pulling out of your investments. The money in the market could earn 10%, it could earn 15%, it could earn negative 10%. What we're going to shoot for on a year-by-year basis is 4%, just geometrically, but the market's going to move like a roller coaster, so it's going to change year over year. So we've got $1 million. We're going to have a 4% rate of return on this money. So the money is going to earn 4% in the stock market. Okay, so very conservative. Remember, the stock market since 1950 has averaged 10%. It's 8% with inflation. So we're going to look at about a 70-year history and say, okay, if we can earn 4%, which is 4 points behind the 8%, we're actually going to be really under promising what we can do, because what I want to do is over deliver. I don't want to over promise and then we run out of money at 75. So 4% rate of return on this $1 million. Remember, we're going to take out $50,000 per year. Okay, now let's talk about inflation for a second, because here's what I want to look at first. I just want to see if the math works, not necessarily getting into all the details like taxes and inflation and Roth conversions and market returns and historical variables. I just want to say, does the math work, right? Math don't lie. Does the math work? So $1 million, taking out $50,000 a year with a 4% rate of return will essentially last 40 years. So the money will last 40 years. So take the first box and go, okay, check mark. We've got $1 million. So that's our base. So now our base number that we need saved in retirement savings is $1 million. We know that. It's not 20% less than that. It's not 50% less than that. That's our base, okay? Because we need $50,000 a year, and we haven't calculated in inflation yet, okay? So how do we do inflation? So let's back this up and go, okay, $1 million. And then let's do the same figures, 4% rate of return, but let's add in inflation now. Inflation's at 3%. Now, inflation historically over the last 108 years has run at 3.24%, okay? So that's including the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 20s, the 30s. But what I want to do is I'm just going to do a round number of 3%. That's just easy for my calculator and it's easy for math. So we're going to have a 4% rate of return on the money in the market. And we're going to have a 3% inflation rate on our income. So the $50,000 that we need in income, it's going to have to increase by 3% every year. Now, when we use the software, the financial EKG, it's increasing on a daily basis. Okay, that's just how the software calculates it. And listen, if you want a financial EKG, if you want to have a retirement income plan, a financial plan that's going to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement, in the description below is a way to get in touch with me. Let's get a financial EKG built for you to give you the confidence to say, hey, I can retire and I have enough in retirement savings. So if we do the math here, we start with our base, we take it over here and we add inflation. So we know we can't have any less than $1 million if we want $50,000 a year and we want to retire at 55. What happens here? Well, we actually run out of money in 25 years. So 55 to 65 to 75 to 80. So we're out of money at 80 years old. We don't want to be out of money at 80 years old, right? So my grandmother, my wife's grandmother, I call her my grandma, she's 81 years old. She does not want to go back to work at 81. Even though she's super in shape, she does not want to go back to work at 81. So now we know we need $1 million. That's our base. But we need to try to keep that life expectancy at 40 years. So how do we increase this? Okay, so we got to do math. We know that this is not enough, that $1 million is not enough to get us to 40 years. How much do we need to get to the 40-year life expectancy to retire at 55? Well, a couple things you can do. You could work longer if you wanted to, but let's say you don't want to work any longer. How much money do you need? Well, in this case, when we plug this actually into the software, because it's a little harder to do on a calculator, so we do get the software involved when we're trying to figure out exactly how much we need to get us to that 40-year mark, it's an extra $383,000. So what that means is, I'm going to put it up here, $1,383,792. So our base figure that we need to retire at 55 is $1 million. Now that's without inflation, without taking any other variables in. When we start to add the variables in, we know we need $1,383,792. So this is kind of our top value. Like this is our hey, if we got $1.4 million, we can do it. So we want somewhere between $1 million and $1.3 million. And if we get to there, then we can say, yeah, I can retire at 55. Now, obviously, you might need to make some adjustments if you're getting closer and you're not to that $1 million mark, or you get to the $1.3 million and the market goes down. There needs to be some adjustments, but we're just trying to get an idea, how much do I actually need to retire at 55? And it actually might not be as much as you think once we do the math. All right, hey, thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments below. Love reading those. Have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.